Hi everyone, thanks for joining me. Today I'm going to show you how to make your own cheater placemats so that you can vary up some of these Pioneer Woman placemat pouches that everybody's been making. I am so overwhelmed by the response I've gotten from the placemat pouches. I get tagged every day, several times a day on different social media from these Pioneer Women placemats that we have all been making. And I really wanted to step out of that realm a little bit and create and use some of my fun own fabrics like I did with this one. And I just made my own placemat, and that's what I'm going to show you how to do. Now, this is just a cheater way to do it. You could totally use this as a real placemat, but again, this is not a real way to do it, and we're not going to bind it all the way around, so don't worry about that if you're not a quilter. We're just going to bind the areas that we need that will show on the placemat pouch. Now, if you want to bind one all the way around and make a real bound placemat that you can use on your table, I'll link a video below that shows you how to do the seam binding all the way around. Okay, so the first thing you're going to need is 2 strips of fabric 2.5 by 16 inches long. You can see I've got mine folded over here. Mine are actually a little bit longer, and that's fine, but they do need to be 2.5 inches wide. I'm using Heat and Bond fusible fleece, and that is cut to 14 by 19. You can pick this up by the yard at your local fabric store, or you can buy it in this packaging. I'll have all of these products linked in the video description below this video. And then you're going to need your outer fabric, which is cut to 15 by 20, and the back side of your fabric, which is going to become your lining if you're using this for a bag, which is also going to be 15 by 20. So your 2 larger pieces of fabric are both 15 by 20. The fusible fleece is 14 by 19, and your strips are 2.5 by 16, and you need 2 of those. We're going to start by taking the piece of fabric that's going to be your outer fabric, or the outer part of the bag, and we're going to add the fusible fleece. Now, the fusible fleece is 1 inch shorter in both directions, so you're just going to center that in the center of the back side of your outer piece and apply heat. I've put my iron on the cotton linen setting, and I suggest that you press from the center out. It's going to take a little bit longer than just applying a regular interfacing. So just work your way around, and once you get it adhered, I suggest turning it over and iron it from the front side as well as the back side. So once you have your fusible fleece adhered to your outer fabric, you're going to add your other piece of fabric pretty side down so that pretty sides are touching. Now, this next step is totally optional, but I find that it really helps in making sure that I keep this rectangle in a rectangle shape. I don't get it out of alignment or kind of wonky. So I'm just marking a 1/2 inch seam allowance that's going to be my guide for sewing. So I'm just all the way around, I'm going to mark 1/2 inch in. And once you have your seam allowances drawn all the way around, again, that's optional. If you're comfortable sewing and know that you can stay in a straight line and keep everything even, you don't need to do it. But I think it's a really easy way, and it doesn't take much time to make sure that you keep things straight. So line your 2 fabrics up. Make sure they're lined up perfectly on top of each other, nice and square. And then you're going to pen or clip all the way around both pieces of fabric. And once you have it clipped all the way around, you can see I marked one end with 2 pins. So I'm going to start sewing at the first pin, backstitching when I start, so all the way around, and stop and backstitch at the second pin. Okay, so you can see I've sewn all the way around except for between the 2 pins. I'm going to go ahead and remove the pins, and then I'm going to hit this with a hot iron and get rid of all of my ink marks. Once you've removed your ink marks, we're going to trim off each of the corners, being careful not to cut into your seams. You can see I've trimmed off all of the corners. And now we're going to reach inside of the opening that we left where the pins were and turn this right side out. So this is kind of the fun part. I like to go clear to the opposite end and pull those ends through first, and then continue turning it right side out. It takes a little bit of maneuvering to get this right side out. You want to get a chopstick or a bone folder or a corner turner something. I find a bone folder works really, really well. And reach inside that hole once you've got it right side out and really push those corners out. You want those to stay nice and square. So I'm just reaching inside and I'm going to fix all 4 corners. Once you've got those corners turned out nicely, go ahead and take your bone folder or chopstick or pen, whatever you're using to push your corners out, and run it along those edges on the inside and just make sure everything is pressed out nicely. I've brought my pressing surface back into the frame and I'm going to iron this in position. I'm trying to make very certain that on the edges that the underside is not showing, the red fabric is not showing on the top. I want that to be nice and centered with the blue arrow fabric on the top. So take your time and press this really nicely. When you get to that opening, you want to also make sure that your fabric is turned down on both the outer or the top fabric and the bottom fabric. This is pretty much reversible, so you can use it either way, but you want to make sure both fabrics are turned under. And then once you have everything ironed into place, we're going to take it back to our sewing machine and just top stitch around the top edge using about between 1/8 and 1/4 of an inch. I put a clip on where the opening is just so that it reminds me to make sure and slow down and make sure that that opening gets closed up nicely. And again, you just want to make sure that none of those fabrics are rolling up from the bottom. So I'm just going to put a few clips just to help it stay in place and not roll as I'm sewing it. And this is basically a finished placemat. You could go ahead and proceed from here and make a bag, and you would have nice finished edges all the way around. Your insides are going to be finished and neat and clean. So you could stop right now and make your placemat. Now, if you wanted to do a little bit of quilting, you can. You would mark it at this time and then sew on those marked lines. However, I will tell you, I recommend if you're going to do some quilting, don't go all the way to your edges, because these seams are already sewn into place. Your fabric doesn't have anywhere to spread out, and when you quilt, it everything kind of squishes out. So I just ran a couple of lines with a chalk just down the center and then one through each of the sides just to hold my batting in place, or that fusible fleece. But I don't recommend quilting if you're going to do it this way. Step is also optional, but I think it adds a little pizzazz to the bag, and that's what we're going to use the 2.5 by 15 inch, 16 inch, however long you made yours, strips, and we're going to add the trim on the edges. Now, if you were going to make a full placemat, you would want to make this seam binding a lot longer, and I can link a video that will show you how to go all the way around the placemat. But since we're just doing this for the sake of making our own bag, we only really need it on the parts where the zipper is going to be, which are the 2 short ends. So that's all I'm going to do in this. This is a cheater's method of what we're doing to make this look like a placemat. So you're just going to fold your fabric in half lengthwise and press it. And you're going to do that to both pieces. Once you have both pieces ironed, you're going to line them up with the raw edges facing the outer side of the placemat and the folded side facing towards the center. And you're putting that on the back side. And again, you can see I just ran 3 lines down my placemat and I didn't go all the way to the edge. It will start to pucker. But if you're putting this seam binding on it, it covers it. But again, you're putting the folded open end facing out, and the folded side of the fabric is facing towards the center. You're putting it on the back side. You're going to clip it, and then you're going to sew 1/4 inch seams down both ends. 1/4 inch. You don't want to sew much more than that. So you might have to measure or find out where on your presser foot 1/4 of an inch is, but you're going to sew right down both edges 1/4 inch. So once you've done that, it looks something like this. And what I like to do is just push that up and give it a little press. Just keep everything nice and neat. And then you're going to turn it over and flip it around. And you don't want to do this really tight. You want to it should have a little bit of give, just comfortable, but just fold it over, Keep it even all the way across and go ahead and clip. And I don't worry about the fact that it's long on the edges. I just leave those on there because if you remember, in all of the different bags that we make, we trim those edges up. So I just leave it hanging off the edge. I don't worry about it whatsoever. And it gives me a place to start the sewing machine before I actually get to the bulk. So I have something to pull on. So we're going to do the same thing to this side. I'm going to push that up and iron it. I'm going to flip it over. Roll it back towards the front and clip. Once you have that all clipped into place, you're going to take it over to the sewing machine and you're going to sew. I like to sew towards the middle of the placemat, right along that edge on both sides. Try to do the same distance on both sides. It'll be maybe an 1/8 inch seam allowance. And that's it. That's what you need to make your bag. You're going to have the cute little trim around your zipper, and you're going to start just like you would if it was a Pioneer Woman placemat or any of the quilted ones we've been working with. Again, if you want to quilt this, I would recommend just making your quilt sandwich, and I can link a video below, and not do the sewing around the edges and turning it wrong side out like I did in this. This is totally a cheater's easy method to do the placemat bags without actually using a placemat and still having the nice finished edges on the inside. So I hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you did, please give me a thumbs up. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share, and I'll see you guys next time. Bye-bye.